So forgive potential incoherency here, but it's kind of a difficult subject to put into words. So one of the main reasons I left mainstream conservatism, aside from, the social, racial, identity, immigration related issues, is I have a fundamental difference in how I view the world. I find mainstream conservatism, as it's described in the Western Anglo world at least, is largely indistinguishable in terms of how it views the world from Marxism. Now, it takes the opposite position on policy from Marxism, but both of them see human beings not in terms of individuals or anything like that, or even in terms of groups, but as economic units. Both seek to define the individual not as an individual, not as a social role, but as a unit of economic value. And a person's worth in life is determined by the amount of wealth they have or don't have, or the job that they perform, and how successful they are at the job. So I was talking with some reactionary friends of mine, and they were talking about Leave It to Beaver. And they were saying, well, Beaver's father, we don't know what his job was. He would wear a suit. It was clear he had a job, but the work he did was not the focus of his life. The focus of his life was to be a father and to be a man, and whatever hobbies he had. The work was kind of secondary. The work was not a source of self-actualization and ultimate fulfillment for him. And nowadays, when it comes to most what I call mainstream conservatives, it's the exact opposite. The view is your purpose in life is to work. And the more successful that you are at your job and at working, the more worth you have as a human being. If you ever hear me condescendingly say I work for a living, or those of us who work for a living, I'm saying that because that was a douchey thing that Mark Levin, the conservative talk show host, says to people who are unemployed or underemployed. He calls them people who don't work for a living. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who cheat welfare. I'm not defending that. I'm just saying there is this idea that you determine someone's social standing, and not even just that, but their moral and spiritual worth by the profession they have. So, and where does this come from? Sorry, it's just kind of difficult to put this into words. One of the basic premises of modern conservatism as kind of a post-Enlightenment philosophy is the idea that people are fundamentally indistinguishable. Or interchangeable, I think is a better word. It's not that they're equal, but that they're the same. And that the only reason that people aren't all rich is because of a personal moral failing. It's because you're not working hard enough, you're not innovative enough, etc. They reject the idea to a large extent that birth, your genetics, plays any role in your success or failure. If you look at how they talk about minorities, or people from poor backgrounds, or just people who have naturally lower IQs or have mental illnesses or whatever, there's a tendency to say, oh, these people aren't wealthy because they're failing mentally, because they're lazy, because they aren't willing to work hard. There's this belief that there's no role of luck. It doesn't matter where you're born. It doesn't matter what opportunities you have in life. And I'm not saying everything needs to be equal, but I think it's just, let's do a thought experiment. Is there an aspect of being in the right place at the right time to have success in life? Well, obviously there is. Sometimes you happen to meet somebody who gets you a job, or suggests something to you, or helps you out, or someone who inspires you, and that will change the course of your life. Some people have functional families, and that the functional family allows them to be a respectful and responsible member of society. Some people don't have families like that. So you have this ideology which rejects all the obvious factors that go into people's lives. And it says, okay, none of these factors exist. Birth doesn't matter. Genetics doesn't matter. Culture doesn't matter. Life situation doesn't matter. Personal preference doesn't matter. All that matters is whether you're a hard worker or not. And that's kind of the lie that they spread. And to a large extent, even among the supposedly religious conservatives, they tend to de-emphasize other things, like being a father. There's almost a hatred of art in a lot of cases, a hatred of nature, a hatred of... And I think part of it is a reaction against how left-wing and shitty academia, intellectualism, and modern art are. I don't disagree with that, but I think there's also kind of a contempt for it among a lot of the right, that it's not an economically useful thing, so it has no value. The only things that have value are things that produce a set amount of value for society. So, like I said, your social and moral worth is entirely dependent upon your job, and some jobs are more prestigious than others. There's a fundamental rejection of the idea that within a society, people are naturally different and there needs to be hierarchy. And there's nothing wrong with hierarchy. And there's nothing wrong with people doing different things, because it's kind of like an integralism. Everything is integral to society. You need people who could be doctors, who can cure diseases. You need people who will repair cars. That's an extremely important job, to be able to repair things. You need people who can clean. Cleaning is an extremely important job. There's no shame in doing these things. Somebody needs to do them. We can't have a society, like conservatives think, where every man a king, where every man is like some wealthy industrialist. That's just not how the world works. There are always going to be a couple people who are lucky and have good genetics and have the right personality who are going to rise to the top. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just kind of the way life is. But there's nothing dishonorable or there's nothing wrong with people who don't rise to the top. There's a lot of people who don't place money as their primary value. And I'm almost programmed to cringe whenever somebody says that money isn't the only thing that matters. Because we're taught that those people are evil, they're lazy, they're morally bankrupt. Now, if those people are dependent on welfare and they're stealing from other people, that's different. But I know people who are doctors or who have parents who are doctors, and their parents only work like 3 or 4 days a week. And they could be making probably 2 or 3 times as much money and live a life of luxury, but they value their time more. They value spending time with their kids and their families, and or their personal hobbies, more than they just value just doing their job and making as much money as possible. And we have a tendency in society to view these people as somehow being villainous. These people are evil. It's a moral failing if you don't choose to work more. People who don't want to work unpaid overtime, who are like, well, I have other shit I want to do with my time. I have friends, I have family, I have hobbies. Maybe the person just wants to go home and play video games because they're fucking, like, tired or something. There's nothing wrong with that. There's this idea that if people want downtime, they want to chill and enjoy life a bit, that these people are somehow evil. And like I said, there's a difference between wanting to do that if you are being productive and wanting to do that if you're being a leech on society. But to kind of the modern conservative, there's no difference between that. If you want something, if you think society is in any way unfair or you've been treated unfairly, it's a result of a moral failing on your standpoint for not working harder. If you're not the CEO of the company in 10 years, then you're worthless. And I think to a certain extent that's why we've seen a de-emphasis on having children, because children, like, raising children is not a moral or social benefit anymore. It's not viewed as you're an exceptional person for doing that. What's socially more desirable is to, instead of having children, to work an extra 20 hours a week. It's almost kind of become a contest with whoever could endure the worst working situation. It's kind of like a triumph of the will, or the will to power. I can work 50 hours of unpaid overtime. I can work 60. That kind of thing. It dehumanizes the individual. It also removes God from society, and the focus no longer becomes about worshiping God. It's about worshiping labor, etc. So in a lot of ways, it's extremely similar to Marxism. It's just they take the opposite perspective. The Marxist blames the upper class for why everyone's not rich. The conservative blames the lower class for why everybody isn't rich. Neither can accept that society naturally has the wealthy and the poor, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But there needs to be kind of some regulation between the two of them. It's going to be an eternal balancing act. But both kind of have their utopian ideas as to what will fix society, and ironically both have kind of these in Marxism, the idea is after the dictatorship of the proletariat is over, the state will fade away and you'll be left with a stateless society where everybody's rich. And in capitalism, you have the same in conservatism, you have the same idea. The state will fade away, everyone will become rich, and there'll be this free market throughout the world. So I know that was kind of stream of consciousness, but hopefully that kind of made sense. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something, and I'll talk to you guys later.